You will hear sound. After I record it, you'll see the little recording thing pop up, and sound will come after that. So make sure you got your earbuds in or your speakers on. Alright, so it's time to start. Today we're going to be going through some tips and techniques for starting from a pencil sketch. And then bringing the pencil sketch into SketchClub, where we can do more stuff to it. Turn it into a finished piece. Shine it up. Alright, so the first step is obviously to do a pencil sketch. I do a lot of pencil sketches just on the go or at work when I'm supposed to be doing other things. Whatever, so I tend to collect them, and then I want to do something with them. I bring them into SketchClub. So after I've done the pencil sketch, then I use the camera on my iPad to take a picture of it, and then we'll use the load image feature of SketchClub to bring the picture into one of the layers. So let's do that now. Now there's a couple of things that I do to the image after I've loaded it to make it easier to work with. First I'm going to transform it to make it fit the space a little better. And once I have it more or less where I want it to be, I use the color adjustment filter. And what I'm going to do there is I'm going to reduce the saturation to 0. That will remove all of the color. And then after I've reduced the saturation to 0, I will bump up the brightness and contrast by eye until I see, the lines are clear enough to follow. And it'll look like this. No, I want you to be able to see all the controls as I use them, so it's not in full screen. Well, it is full screen, but can't you see the full screen? I can on mine. Are you guys not seeing all the controls and stuff? Okay, I was worried there for a minute. Alright, so once I have the image like this, then I'm going to do a save, and then we'll start turning it into a finished piece here. So we'll actually be doing several steps. The first step will be to create the line art from the pencil sketch. So I'm going to move up now to a layer that is above the pencil layer, and I will be using the pen tool to create some line art based on this pencil sketch. Sure, saving. You tap the little arrow kind of looking thing next to the globe up at the top, and then you pick a slot and you tap that and it saves into that slot. So now like I said, I'm going to use the pen tool. I've edited the pen tool slightly to my own liking. Let me show you the settings on that. It's fairly easy. The main thing is that I set the taper slightly so that as I draw, the center of the line will be thicker than the two ends. I just like that look, so that's what I use. And now, so that I can see my lines better, I've reduced the opacity of the layer on which the pencil is. It was actually came out a little bit too dark. So this is all going on, on one layer so far. I'll just be doing the basic line work, and of course later as I come back and look at it, I may wind up changing some of it, but we'll get the basic line work down in one spot here. So what we've got now is one layer that the pen work is on and one layer that the pencil sketch is on. The pencil sketch will be thrown away later. Yeah, I'm using a stylus. It's what kind is this stylus? It's kind of a funny one, the one I'm using today. I use different ones at different times. really like the cool, even though it's very short. And today I'm using one that has like a fabric tip on it. It doesn't even have a name on it, so I don't know where I got it. But it has a very smooth glide over the surface, which I like. And of course, there are many different ways and styles that you could use. You start with your pencil sketch. You could turn it into a painting, or you could turn it into more of a drawing like we're doing here. And I'm going to use the line art plus flat shading mostly for this particular one. That's just the sort of a comic book style that we're going for today, but you're not limited to that, of course. You can do it in different ways. Alright, so we'll call that the line art for now. So now I will make the layer on which the pencil is invisible. I'll keep it around for now in case I want to refer back to some of the locations of, especially the mouth, which I'm not outlining the entire mouth. I'm just doing the underline of the lower lip and the mouth line itself. The rest will be done with shading. I'm also planning to put some kind of a clothing on her, so I won't bother with anything down there on the body part. Okay, so this is what we've got to start with is our line work. So we will now save this into another slot. I usually save into multiple slots as I go along. That way, if I really do mess something up, I can at least go back to a previous version. I also will often reverse the image with the little flip tool, which is on your canvas up there at the top. It looks like a two-headed arrow. You can flip your entire canvas using that. It's nice to look at your work the other way now and then, because your eye gets used to seeing it one way, and if you flip it you can see mistakes and things more easily. Talking about this green bar at the bottom, that's the recording level when I talk. Okay, so since we're going to be coloring this, I've prepared ahead of time a color gamut mask, which I'm going to use as the general guide to the color scheme that I use. Now, I have a previous class, it's called Color Theory, which explains in detail how to create one of these masks. So I'm not going to go into that now, but I'm just going to bring it up so I can use it. So this is the color mask I intend to use. Basically what it is, it's a kind of a cool way of making sure that the colors that you choose are harmonious and that they will go together well. The ones at the bottom of this particular mask are the background colors, the shadow colors, the softer colors. The ones at the top would be the more highlight colors that we're going to use. Yes, it is available on the classes page. If you go to the online help and go to classes, you can find my color theory class there, and it's a couple of hours of how to make these gamut masks and use them. Right, so anytime that I'm coloring things, there'll be a progression that goes on, because I can never get exactly the colors I want the first time. It sort of goes along. So I'm going to start just by filling in the background with a color from the bottom here, probably one of the purples, and use that as a basis for comparing, so that as I add other colors I have something to go on, because I can't work on pure white because then I have nowhere to go. Like the brightest color I have is already on the canvas if I have white there, and I don't want the brightest color there when I start, maybe when I end. Alright, so now I'm choosing first the color I'm going to use for the skin, and I've started with the orange from the top there, and I changed it slightly. I made it a little bit more pink because I like pinker skin, and I know that later when I start messing with it it'll probably get more yellowish anyway, and I don't really want her to be yellow, so I made sure she was pretty pink to start with here. So I'm going to be using the vector tool to lay down the flat colors, and by flat colors I mean unshaded. There'll just be one big block of the same color, and I'm going to have the opacity at 100% and fill on, and then I'm just going to color in the parts of the drawing. I'm going to start with the skin areas. Now, I'm not being overly careful at this stage. I will come back later and clean up areas where I've gone outside the lines or whatever. But where the hair is, I'm going to be going over it with other colors anyway, so it's not going to matter there. So I want you to see the layers I have so far. There's the line drawing layer, which I did with pen, and right underneath that there's one layer of color so far. I'm now going to add another layer underneath the line layer, which I will use for the hair color. I sometimes separate out the different sections of the colors just so that I can adjust them a bit later. Alright, so that's the basic flat color of the hair. Yeah, I was watching some cartoon last night. The girl had really red orange hair, so you're stuck with that today. Yeah, it does show up as an image load, and usually what I do is I upload the pencil sketch itself as a WIP, work in progress. That way it sort of proves that it's all mine. Okay, so now I'm just going to add a little bit of a blue dress or something to her. I won't get too involved with it at this point. I just want to put some blue there so that I can see how that'll look. Okay, so now we have the basic flat colors down. Uh, Obviously, you can go back in and clean them up if you want, and we may do that later. But for the sake of the class, I'm trying not to take too much time on this. So let's say what we've got now. We've got 3 layers. We have the line work layer, we have the hair and dress color layer, and then we have the skin color layer at this point. Oh, and the purple background layer. Alright, so now that we have this basic colors, I have to give her some color to her eyes here. I guess her eyes should be blue as well, so let's put some blue for the eyes. You save so that you can possibly go back to a previous version if you mess up, because it's entirely possible to mess up, and also just to make sure that it is in fact saved somewhere so that if there's a crash or a power outage or your battery goes dead, you don't lose your work. So now before I put the blue for the eyes, I colored them in with an off-white. I do not use a pure white for the eye whites because then it's too white. In fact, this is actually a little bit too white, but it's okay because this is a cartoon. So we'll go with that, and then we'll put the blue on top of it. Okay, so there we have the initial flat colors. That is step 1 for coloring. So I'll stop here to see if there are any questions before I move on to the next stage. Questions? Yeah, you can paint on it while it's flipped. Doesn't matter which direction you're looking at it. The line drawing is just normal. They're all normal layers now. I haven't used any blending modes at all. What what song I'll be singing? What song would you like me to sing? '80s. What makes you think I was alive in the '80s? Okay, so moving on, we're now going to start doing some basic shading on this person. I guess she's an elf. Yeah, because of the ear. Or it could be a Vulcan. Alright, so I choose a new layer above all the other layers. I set the blending mode to multiply, and I set the opacity to around 20-25%. Let me show you my layers at this point. So the multiply blending mode will cause whatever you draw on that layer, the multiply layer, to darken anything that's underneath it. But it won't really change it, it'll just darken it in some way depending on what color you use. So we're going to be using sort of purples as our shadow color on this, and I'm going to pick that from my gamut mask. So I'm using this purple color now, and I'm using the vector tool again. I used the vector tool to clean up a couple of things there while I was looking at it. I just changed the mode of the tool to erase, and erased with it. I didn't use an eraser. I used vector erase. vector erase is awesome because it's so fast and so precise. But it has no fuzzy edges to it, so it's only good for certain types of cleanup, but it's perfect for this. Okay, so now let me start doing the shading, and this is just based on where I think shadows will appear. Basically in the eye sockets, under the nose, the upper lip, under the lower lip, where the hair goes over the face, that kind of thing. I'll just kind of wing it based on many faces that I've looked at. Now I'm using this purplish color as my shading color, and it's on a multiply layer, so it does look somewhat purplish, and I like the look of the contrast, because the purple against the orange is a nice complementary contrast. Okay, so I've put in the basic shading. This is what I call flat shading. There's no blurring to the edges. Everything has a sharp edge. It's very comic-like, but I actually kind of like it. Now at this point, we have one layer of shadows, which is our multiply layer that we painted on in purple. And we can adjust the level of the opacity of that layer and affect how dark the shadows are. They look about right at this point, but I'll just show you the different effects you can get by changing that. So this is turning up the opacity of the shadow, so now we get a much more intense look to the shadows, and then you can just play with them. It depends on the effect that you're trying to achieve. Alright, so I'm going to wind up going with about 30% opacity on that guy. So we will save our progress now, like we always do, so that we are in good shape. Alright, so now I'm going to add another layer of basically the same thing, another multiply layer, so that I can do additional darker shadows on top of these shadows. I often like to use a two-layer shadow approach on these types of drawings. It just gives it a little bit more pop, I think. I'm going to continue using the same purple color. Actually, I'm going to darken it a little bit. And I'm going to increase the opacity of the new shadow layer to 50%. And I'm going to use that to add darker shadows inside the other shadow areas. It's looking a little too dark for me, so I'm going to back off on the opacity a bit. Okay, so that finishes that layer. Now, as I'm looking at it, I see some options here for making, giving her some eyeshadow or something. We'll worry about that in a moment. I think that's about what I need for that layer. Alright, we save our progress and we stop for questions. Any questions on the shadowing portion? Yeah, I like the vector tool. It's quick. Uh, it takes a little getting used to using it, but I use it a lot, especially for this type of shading where it's flat colors and flat shading without a lot of blending. Although there are lots of ways to use the vector tool and still do blending, although you have to usually do the blending after the fact with the blur or smudge tool. I do that as well. I'm not going to do that today though. Okay, so there we go with the basic uh, flat colors. We've got our line work. We've got our 2 layers so far of shadowing. And now we're going to move to the what I call turning the lights on. I usually use Dodge or Screen for that. I think today we'll be using the Dodge, and I'll show you how that works. Alright, so in order to use Dodge, the way I do it anyway, there are other ways, but this is my preferred technique. I find it gives me the nicest results as far as looking like light is shining. I make a new layer above all the other layers. I set the blending mode to Dodge, and then I fill the layer with black. So let me do that much first. Okay, so now I have my dodge layer on there, and since it is set to black, the other layers don't change, because anything that's black on a dodge layer has no effect on the underlying layers. That's how it works. So now what we're going to do is use a brush, a regular soft round brush, and we'll use a darkish gray to begin with, and we'll start painting on the dodge layer. And every place that I paint with this darkish gray will become lighter underneath it, as though light was shining on it. I'm being very careful here, very subtle to begin with. I'm using almost black to paint. That way it doesn't lighten it up too much as I go here. And then I will move it more and more toward white as I want to increase the amount of brightness in different places. Yeah, the dodge layer is 100% opacity. Now one place that I will use possibly a much lighter color of gray is in the eyes. I haven't put the highlights in the eyes yet, but I know where they're going to go. They're going to go on the upper left side, so that means the lower right side will be the lightest part of the iris, and the upper left side will be the darkest part. So I'm going to use the dodge to lighten the other side. Okay, I need to fix that one line that I drew with the pen that doesn't match because it's too short. So let me fix that up. Hold on a sec. I didn't undo it, I erased it. I used the vector tool to erase the line, and then I redrew it in with the pen tool again. And while I'm in there on the line layer, I'm going to do a little bit more work on the eyelashes, make them a little thicker. So I'm just going to thicken up my pen a little bit and draw some a little bit thicker eyelashes on there. Okay, so now we'll go back to the dodge layer and continue. I'm going to do the highlights on the hair and on the ear and what have you. I'm just slowly lightening up certain parts of it to make it look like light is shining on it. Okay, now I'm going to switch my brush. I'm going to use a brush that it's a hair brush. It's basically some little dots. so that when I draw with it, it looks kind of like a bunch of lines that are parallel to each other. And I'm going to use that to add some additional hair highlights, and I use that because it sort of indicates the texture of hair. Oopsie, crashed there. I hope it's still streaming. Everyone still see it okay? I'm just being careful. I I could paint on the skin, but I'm just missing it. Okay, time to save our progress. So there's a picture of our layers. We have the dodge layer on the top, two multiply shadowing layers under that, the line art layer under that, and then the hair color under that, and the skin color under that, and then at the very bottom is just the background purple. So I want to add highlights to the eyes now so that I can get a kind of an idea of how the eyes are going to look when they have their highlights in. So the highlights for the eyes is the only place, generally speaking, that I use pure white, and I will just dot them in with a soft round brush. Usually, that's what I'm going to do now. Sure, ask the question. If you scroll down to the very bottom of the brush menu, you will find a little one square that says Add. And if you click on Add, you can then browse all the brushes that have been uploaded that you can download. It's also possible to make your own brushes, which I do sometimes, and I've given classes on that, but we're not going to be making our own brushes today. Now the detail on the eyes I made on a whole new layer. It's just a normal layer above all the others. I will probably merge it down in a bit, but I like to just keep that on a separate layer for now. So the last bit I'm going to do here as far as the coloring is concerned is I want to add a little bit of blush. So I'm going to, actually on the same layer there, probably where I have the eye highlights, I'm going to use the soft round brush with a reddish color and do a little bit of blush on the cheeks and the nose and what have you, probably the lips, to give it a little bit more variation in color to the skin. I'm experimenting with eyeshadow. I do not like that, so I'm going to get rid of it again. I think it would be better with a darkish purple than this blue I put there. Okay, yeah, maybe a little too much glam, but we'll leave it like that for now. Alright, so any questions up to this point? Right, then I'll assume there's no questions and move on. At this point, I would probably like do some more stuff. I'd add some patterns or something interesting more to the clothing. We're just going to skip ahead on that and not do it because we're already an hour and a half in here. So I want to show you some more of what we do with the background and how we finish up the picture. Okay, so I have now finally erased the pencil sketch. I don't need to go back to it. I do have it saved though in in a different slot in case I need to show it. I will probably upload it as a work in progress. So we have the background is just a flat purple. I want to add some kind of interest to it. The first thing I'm going to do is add a gradient. There's different ways to do this. You can use the vector tool, but I'm actually going to use the Pastor Bob approach, and I'm going to go to the layer above it, and then I'm going to put a big flat blob of lighter purple, and then I will transform it. I will increase the size of it until I get the effect I want. You'll understand more when you see me do it. Now I'm creating another new layer above both of those background layers, and I'm going to turn mirroring on. We'll put mirror on both directions. That's from this menu right here. Then I'm going to turn my drawing mode to line. You can use circle, you can use square. I'll use line to start with. Caused me to only be able to draw straight lines, which is a plus for me. Then I'm going to grab some kind of texture brush, and I'm going to draw in various shades of purple and what have you in the background until I get something that I like. Basically, this is just, you just kind of experiment until you find something you like. Really just trying different things. I'm going to try a circle shape and see what I get. Alright, well, you get the idea. You can go on forever trying different ways and making different types of backgrounds. I just wanted to add a little bit of interest to it so it wasn't just a flat purple background. So we'll leave it right there, I think. Actually, I think I'm going to take away those little circles I did. Don't like them too much. Okay, so now at this point we'll call it quote-unquote done. There's obviously a lot more you could do with it, but we'll leave it here. And I will show you what I call my finishing moves. Those are ways that I use at the end of the drawing to adjust it, change the color a little bit, usually make it pop a little more. So the first step is to merge all the layers into one layer. So make sure that you have saved before you do this. Alright, so let's merge them all to one. To do that, you scroll down to the bottommost layer and select it, and you will find a little button that lights up, says Merge All. And that will take all of your layers and put them down into one layer without changing the appearance of anything. Once you have merged everything into one layer, save it again into a different slot. Just in case something messes up, you can always go back to the one that has layers and work from there again. And now we'll play around with filters. I'm going to use the color adjustment filter first, and I will probably bump up the saturation a bit to make the colors a little bit brighter. Saturation is basically a measure of how much color there is. So by pushing the saturation up, you wind up producing more color. If you were to take it down, the color would become less and less, and it would become more and more gray. If you took it all the way down, it would become completely grayscale. Okay, so I pushed the saturation up a bit, not too much, and I changed the hue slightly as well. I made it -5. The reason I did that is because when I push the saturation, it tends to turn the skin more yellow. So I compensated for that by pushing the hue down, -5. Now I want to experiment a little bit with the filter called Vibrancy. I'll push the vibrancy up a little and see how it works. Sometimes vibrancy can change the colors too much, so you have to be careful with it. It can reduce the brightness of the overall range, and if it's used in moderation, though, it can be quite nice. It's just called vibrance, not vibrancy, but it affects the vibrancy. All it really did there was make the background a little darker, which in this case I thought was okay, so I'll leave it there. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else we want to do to this or not. No, she still looks like she's looking at you when I flip it, so I guess we're okay. I could probably fix the cheek up a little. We'll leave it. We're not going to fix it. Now, if you want to at this point, you can also mess around with more dodge layers and what have you. I might actually do that to brighten up the highlights in the hair just a little bit more. So I used the dodge a little bit more to increase the overall glistening parts of this drawing. The hair highlights, the glassy look of the eyes to make them look transparent, and a little bit of highlight on the nose and the lip. And we'll call it good. So now we just have to put our signature on it and call it a picture. Yeah. Any more questions on anything that we've done today? Oh, I just did the signature on a separate layer, and then I transformed the layer. Okay, well, the video seems to have worked this time. At least it hasn't crashed yet. So I want to thank you all for being here with me. It's been fun, and I will upload the video as soon as I can for those that missed any parts of it or just want to see it again. Thanks. Bye.